Good afternoon, NIO fam. It is Laser here with a Friday afternoon weekend video analysis on NIO. Normally this video comes out on a Friday night or a Saturday morning. This one's coming to you guys a little bit early as it's Good Friday. So happy Good Friday to the NIO fam, as well as happy long Easter long weekend for anyone that will be celebrating it. I wanted to make this video on this day off. This is like the earliest I've kind of felt like I'm putting together this video, but the stock market is closed, so it's the perfect time to be doing this. And I gotta say, NIO is one of those stocks that always feels super duper tricky, and I'm gonna try and actually share as to where I see that going. Now, if you're new here, making a big financial decision, please do your own research. Please do your own due diligence. I'm just a guy who likes to share my opinion as to where I see the stock going. I've been wrong before, so please take what I say with a grain of salt, as always. And you should do that with anyone. Nobody is 100% correct. The way we like to do things, if you're new here, we don't just look at NIO. We look at BABA, Baidu, JD, KWeb. And we also like to look at the US dollar, which is the Dixie. And we do like to take a look at the Hang Seng Index to try and kind of piece together the different puzzle pieces. There are more puzzle pieces, but if I start covering all of them, then the video ends up being too long. So we're just going to try and cover these few things in this video and see where that takes us for today. Before we begin, we always like to start off with the life and the laser to kind of share with you a little bit about my personal life. Last week, I was sick. You know, my nose was scratchy, or not my nose, my throat was scratchy, and my nose was running. And I felt like my throat was running dry. So this time I brought a glass of water. And last week's video, we talked a little bit about USA and Iran. Honestly, I'm kind of tired talking about that. And I want to give you guys a little bit of a life in the laser. And this was more a question out to the NIO fam. I would love to hear your comments in the comment section below. Please share. What is your nighttime routine? And I'm asking that because I've been working on that this past week as my nighttime routine. And I've experimented with a bunch of different things as to what works best. If I try and lay in the bed without kind of going through my normal routine, I find myself just like tossing and turning and not able to fall asleep. And the one thing that works is putting on a movie. My brain shuts off. I don't need to worry about stocks. I don't need to worry about anything else. It's all automatic. I can just sit there and watch it. You get a beginning, a middle, and end in the movie, and it just feels good. It gives you like that nice closure at the end of the movie, and then you can just go to bed. And so to me, watching a movie or even a TV show really kind of hits the spot. I recently started watching the latest season of Stranger Things. I enjoy the sci-fi series, actually. And that's kind of a show that I'm currently watching. But if you guys have any good shows or any good movies that you'd like to recommend, let me know. I'd love to hear it in the comment section below. And if you want to share what your nighttime routine is, I would love to hear that because I'm working on that. And the only thing that seems to kind of make me feel kind of allows me to fall asleep is putting something on the TV that allows me to shut down. Because if I don't, and I end up on the computer, I'll end up staring at stocks and it'll stress me out, like constantly staring at the charts all day. And I try and not do that. I've been through that phase. And I know better to just shut down, turn it off, and just relax. It's so important to just relax and allow your nervous system to just, unwind and have that peace. And to me, that's movies and TV shows. Anyways, that's it. That's a life in the laser actually for this week. I'll have to come up with something different actually to share with you as to how it is. So you're going to have to tune in for next week to hear how things are going in my life. I'm going to share with you where I see the stock price of NIO going into next week. And I opened up this video saying like how tricky NIO has been. NIO always tends to humble everybody because it's a very heavy, crowded retail play. And very often it can actually trick you. And I feel like I've been tricked a couple different times, but we're going to try our best and see where things are going. Now, we had a really awesome close at $6.30 on the Thursday there. And it did so on a little bit of a lighter volume. I would have liked to have seen a little bit of a more higher volume candle on that daily as we kind of pushed higher. To me, that would actually show a little bit more conviction, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'll take it. It's a win. We've closed up like higher. Now, price is one thing. You look at price and you can see price is pushing and we're getting push. We're pushing higher and we're actually still kind of treading below this line, but it just keeps hammering away at it and hammering away at it. So it is something that I am watching. Now, as you can see below, I'm also watching the velocity. One of the things that I have been looking for is waiting for that continuation of the higher low. Now, as you can see here, we got a higher low. When did it happen? It was basically Monday. Monday, the gap up. Tuesday, it went crazy. Continuation into Wednesday and even Thursday. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 green days in a row. Beautiful. And now that's causing our velocity here on the 24 hours to curl up. Now, if you guys watch American football, not European football, I know a lot of you guys are from Europe, but American football, I really like to use the analogy fourth down. I believe like right now, NIO is in the fourth down. And if you're American, you guys know what that means. That means, are you going to punt it or are you going to try and risk it and go for the first down? And I believe that's exactly where NIO is right now. And the reason for that is we have a higher high, we have a higher low, but we don't have that higher high. And that's where the first down comes in. Now, if just a quick one-liner, if you don't watch American football and you don't understand how it works, the offensive team who has the football has 4 turns to get the ball past the 10. They have to at least travel 10 yards with that ball. They get 4 tries. And if they don't do it on that 4th try, it's a turnover. And I like this analogy because if NIO or any stock for that matter doesn't get the higher high here, which is the 10-yard line, which is traveling just the right amount of time to get renewing the next 4 turns, then you have a turnover. You have a lower high here, which is typically is a very bearish signal. That's a signal that you do want to not take lightly. And so that is something that I've been tossed and turned with, and we don't have that confirmation yet. I think it's still in the 4th down. Everything still looks good under the hood, and we're gonna go ahead and do that and look at the 4-hour time frame. We're gonna go ahead and look at the 1-hour time frame, and we're gonna even dive in as close as the 15 and 5 minute, just because it's getting to the wire. We want to be totally sure here, and we can never ever be fully sure, but we're gonna try our best. And to me, where I'm gonna be really comfortable is when our velocity makes a higher high. To me, that's a first down. When you make that higher high, it's like, you got a breather. And then now you get another 4 tries. You've basically earned the right to pull back and can get continuation and form another higher low. All right. I hope that's important. Now we're going to go and look. We're still in this uptrend, which is great. And it's making higher highs, higher lows. We want to see that higher high come in. Hasn't given us yet, but I suspect if things continue in the way that they have been, we'll get it. Let's look under the hood. Let's go to the 4 hour. Oh, and before we go do that, if we make the first down, the analogy that I talked about, and get the higher high, the price target that I'm looking for, and eventually we're going to break above that, we can use Fibonacci trend lines. And that takes us to, are we on the log scale? We are. I'm going to use the magnetic tool. I'm going to make sure I get that right to the top tick and the bottom tick. So we go right to the low here on March 3rd, which was $4.41, going right up to the high on March 16th, which was $6.21. Then you go all the way down to the low on Friday, March 27th, which was $5.29, and we now get price targets using Fibonacci. And I can show you an example where this worked out really, really nicely, which was right over here. I will even go right down to that low here. Wrong tool. I'm going to show you how that works. Now, the last time we had a 100% rally, you were able to, you can even, actually, I think that would be better. We'll do it like that. I don't want to extend it to the right so it doesn't look so messy, But notice the price reached up to, was the high here? 683. It just rejected off the 100%. And here, I'm going to have to drag this out so it actually stretches across this whole thing. And you can see it managed to actually reach all the way into the 127.2, which would actually be $8.18, which would actually be taking out the previous highs, which is maintaining the higher highs and higher lows from a price structure. And I mean, like, that's beautiful. If we get that, that's another 30% to the upside if we get that. And even if it's modest and you get only to 745, that's still another 18% away. Beautiful. Now let's look under the hood. Let's look under the 4 hours, and then we'll look under the 1 hours, and we'll just keep going. Now, when we go to the 4 hour time frame, the one thing I always look at when it comes to the velocity is I look at the yellow line, which is our 200-day moving average. This tends to kind of it helps reduce and eliminate the noise, and it makes sure that we're still maintaining this trend. And if we look carefully to our yellow line here, we can see that it's making higher highs relative to the previous highs and higher lows relative to the previous lows. And again, higher high, higher lows. You love seeing that. It looks great. And most recently, when it went from 621 all the way down to 531, you'll notice that the velocity was making lower highs and lower lows and lower highs and lower lows until most recently this move, we now have a higher high. And we have here a higher low. Beautiful. And it's usually when you get the higher low on the 4 hours that the 24-hour velocity tends to it's your really bullish signal. It's a very bullish signal. And I say this because NIO tends to always humble everybody, and it's never black and white. It's never super easy. But the analogy on the first down and fourth down, it does need to make a higher high here. If it makes a lower high here, it would effectively be making a bearish divergence. It would be like buyers are kind of slowing down. They're getting sold off. What that could do is it could trigger another pullback. Now, I don't believe, and that would actually tend to, that would put the risk of our 24 hours putting in a lower high. So Monday's very critical for NIO. I want to see the close on Monday on NIO above $6.30. I don't care if it dips down to $5.93 or even if it does something crazy like $5.70. I just want the day to close off at $6.30 because so long as we're closing green, our 24-hour velocity will go up. And that's why the 4 hour time frame, it's very important that we get follow through on Monday. And when I look to make sure everything's good under the hood, my only reservation is the velocity on the way up, not velocity, pardon me, the volume on the way to the upside from here to here. It's making higher highs. It's not rising in volume. You're seeing kind of the volume's dropping off. And that was my one thing, is the volume kind of dropping off makes me think, hey, are we losing that enthusiasm from the buyers that are pushing this? Are they not pushing it as much as we'd want it to? And that's my one reservation. And we won't know until next week. But my bias still leans very, very bullish until we see kind of a structure breakdown, which we haven't. We remain very, very, very bullish. So let's go further. Let's dive into the hood. Let's look at the 1 hour time frame. Our 1 hour time frame gives us even more detail. Now, one of the nice things that I'm happy to say and see on the 1 hour time frame is when we moved up on March 25th up to 594, our velocity, I mean, it was a decent move, But this most recent move had a lot more oomph and enthusiasm. It made a higher high, and that kind of almost solidifies this move right here. And from what I can tell here, it made a slight lower low, lower high, lower lows, almost like a quick dip, quick reset. And I can see that the velocity now has broken out here to the upside. It's already curling down here. And we have every reason to be bullish going into next week. Now, that I am leaning bullish that we're going to get that. If I were to draw a trend line from the bottom all the way up here, it doesn't quite line up with that. I wonder if I can do it like that. Can I draw it like this? Can we draw it like that? I think that's more fair. Hang on. I'm really going to stretch it just so I can. I'm trying to be a little biased here to try and make the lines line up here, but this gives us a little bit of room here. You know, maybe it goes sideways and you get a little drop. Maybe it goes down here. All right, let's just say it gaps down. First thing on Monday, you want it to bounce right at 610. That would be the equivalent of when we bounced at 593. This is like your support line, your running up trend line. And if I were, if I wanted to be super generous, I could move it down here and say like, well, no, like, we'll give it a little bit more comfort and wiggle room. It can go down to as low as 6 and then go. And that might look like on the R velocity, that might look like we're getting I'm just going to erase too many drawings to erase. That might look something like this. So far, so good. On the 4 hour, what that might look like. That might look something like this. A little bit slows down and then it goes. It's not quite enough to actually, make a lower high here. It's just, it starts slowing down a little because of that dip. And then it goes. We saw something like this, very similar, leading right before earnings. Now, if we go into the earnings, was it right before earnings that I saw that? Yeah, it was right here where it made a higher low. And it kind of, you notice the price just dragged sideways like that before it went boom, of course. And it was like, okay, was it going to make a lower high? It didn't. It gave you the break above, made a higher high. As soon as it made the higher high, it was right on this candle. So much wiggle, so much scratch. You got it right on that candle right there. You got that higher high, and that's like your first, and then the rest was history. That thing just ran. That just ran on earnings. And I think it's kind of in a very similar place where it could just run. It could just very much run. Now, we're going to go under the hood a little bit deeper. We're going to keep going down the time frames just because I think it's worth kind of looking here on the short-term price action. Sometimes it's not like you can get lost a little bit in the noise, but it is important to look at to see is there anything that we're missing. Now, when I go to the 15-minute time frame, I like what I see. I like that it has higher highs and it's building higher lows. I love that. To me, that's higher high, higher low, higher high. We have now a trend here. Looking good on the 15 minutes. Here's my one reservation. When I go down into the 5-minute time frame, which take this with the smallest grain of salt here, doesn't hold a huge amount of weight. But when you go all the way down into the 5-minute time frame to measure the speed and momentum of these moves, there are some things that it starts showing something. So this really awesome, huge move at the beginning of the week on March. I don't know if that was the beginning of the week. Might have been the previous week. No, that was the beginning of the week. Yeah. It made this awesome high here, but it made lower highs on the 5-minute velocity. And what that means is like you're rising, but you ain't rising as fast as you previously started things out. Usually sign that buyers are kind of looking for a little bit of a break. And you can see that, gave us a little bit of an incoming dip. Now, when I look again when we had Friday's price action, where again, beautiful, even more, I would say even like just a vertical straight line explosive price action and a bounce. It actually took out the previous highs on the velocity, which kind of says like, yeah, there's a lot of move. There's a lot of velocity here. But then when you saw it drift higher into the day and closed at $6.30, it kind of just crawled up there. Now it's okay. It is a 5-minute time frame, but it's showing that there was a little bit of a slowdown from the buyers, and it is a confirmed bearish divergence. We saw it happen here, where the first bearish divergence was right there. It broke below the 200-day moving average, and it still pushed up. Broke out here, and it made another bearish divergence, and then it pushed out here. And you could very well see something like that, where we're going to push out, and you might get another push out here. And then you get that. I'm not too sure. I'm not trying to confuse you. I'm just trying to present what I see. And I know that once you feel 100% confident, that's usually when the stock market tends to humble you. So what I would say is, if I wanted to make this setup the absolute best possible setup for NIO, I would have liked to have seen the volume be higher. On each of these days rising up, the volume is kind of dropping. That is usually how you would actually explain that from a narrative perspective. Is there's less participation. There's less people interested buying it up there. And that's usually a sign that we may, not 100%, because come Monday or Tuesday, that could easily change. We could see the volume rise and it could totally be different. But that's one of my reservations. But I look back and I study. Did we see something similar like that with the volume lobe when it started to break out? And you can study it. You could take a look and you can see, okay, right around here, the volume was low, relatively low, but it didn't have that pattern. Down, down, down. It was like very like almost like perfect. That's like a perfect pattern. Now, if I look at any other patterns here, when it broke out, we did see a decrease of volume here. So we saw it right here, here and here. Volume dropped kind of down, and then out of nowhere, boom, 8% day. So take it with a grain of salt, actually. I'm going to make the call out, though. I believe that you get a small little dip on Monday to $6.15, maybe. Is that what I said earlier? This is my call out for NIO before we move to the next chart. To 6. Okay, so let's just be conservative here. Let's say it just straight up gaps down. 6.10. Maybe even 6.15. Wait, but where is it by morning? By morning it'll be, okay, we'll say 6.15. You get that tag. Boom. And it may not be boom right away on Monday. I want to just see 6.15 and then close the day higher than 6.30. Even if we close 6.31, 6.32, to me, that creeps our velocity. It pushes it up. I want this to push up above here. I want that. I really want that. I want that first down on NIO. And we're going to get it if we close above 6.30. We'll get there. It's not a guarantee to get it if it closes at 6.30, but that's where how we're gonna get there. And there's a reason for me to kind of being like, I'm not too sure. Like, I don't want to lean in. Like, if I were just looking at this and just looking at the velocity, literally higher low continuation, 4 hours, higher low. There's your bullish signal. 1 hour, we're above the 200-day moving average, and it broke out of the velocity. It looks great. Everything looks good. If I were to go to a 30-minute time frame, things kind of don't look as amazing yet. I mean, it's still pretty decent. We haven't gotten the break yet on the 30-minute above the 200-day moving average, but that can come. Okay. So the reason I'm kind of all weird about it, and you'll see when I'm tracking now the US dollar, the S&P 500. Oh, and that's the other thing, is when I look at this entire bounce that we got, was that because of those delivery numbers and because of NIO was doing good, or was that like, is it following the stock market? And then when I line it up to the S&P 500, okay, this most recent move on the S&P 500 is mirroring NIO's mirroring the S&P 500 a little bit. It's following it quite closely. So then you got to ask yourself this question, like, are you bullish on the S&P 500? And if you are, and we're going to push higher, then yeah, then if it continues this correlation, we're going to push up. But are you bearish on the S&P 500? And if you are bearish on the S&P 500, and we've been getting this correlation, and so if we get a sell-off on the S&P 500 and it gaps down, as you know, we saw this move, are we going to get that kind of move where it kind of follows and it's kind of stuck and it's trapped along? And that most stocks follow the S&P 500, and that's just kind of how the algorithms. Not always, but that's the question that I ask. And I want to believe that, because the reason why I lean more bullish is the fundamentals. You have the fundamentals to lean off of. They're breaking records, and they're doing awesome. Everything is lining up really, really good. And if we push into next week, let's do something like that. I'm going to be generous and do it like that. Look at that. If it comes and tags, right, again, that's 692. Wait, by Friday, where does it land? By Friday, 703. I would love to see it at least get to 703, and then into next week. Look at that, 753. So it would look something like this. Next week, push into 7. Maybe a little cool off next week, and then push up to 753. You can get something like that. And then you get a little bit of cool off, and then a final push like that. That would be, let's go. Like, that would be absolutely perfect. Now, looking at just at NIO isn't enough. You do want to look at other pieces of the pie, which is, what are the rest of the other Chinese stocks doing? And then I go down the list here. Where is the list? Baba's showing strength. It's showing early signs of a bottoming here. How do I know this? Baba has a higher low and another higher low. The price made a lower low and a lower low. That's bullish. Your sellers are exhausted on Baba. You might very well be at a bottom here. That's usually what you would see at a bottom. Where did we see that before? Right here. Higher low, higher low, higher low. Boom. Higher low, higher low. Maybe one more higher low, up and down, and we're going to get that explosive. It looks good on Baba on the 24 hours. It's the first time it's starting to look really good since the highs at 180. It's starting to really look like we could actually get a big move on Baba. We might be actually getting towards the bottom here at Baba. And that's awesome, because if Baba is going to start moving up, then it's going to help be a strong tailwind for the rest of the Chinese stocks. So I like what I see. And I think we're going to see a large impulsive move on Baba. Baba looks like it's set up great just at the 24 hours. I go to the 4 hours, and it's making higher lows. It's actually in an uptrend, and it hasn't given us the mean reversion push into the midline yet, but I think that's coming. It's looking really, really, really good. Notice it's making lower lows, but the price is making higher lows. The sellers who are pushing it down here, they're doing it with way less speed. The liquidity's drying up here. You're going to get that mean reversion and that push that's going to push Baba up way higher. Now, if it ends up being where I would want to target for Baba from a Fibonacci perspective, is if you get that bounce, I always like to say golden pocket is a great spot to look. I'd be watching for 156 over the next, like leading into the earnings. I would look at that 156 number, and then perhaps it comes back down, and then you would get that big move. Like that to me makes a lot of sense for BABA, and maybe it overextends it into 165. But this is, you love seeing this. You love seeing that bottom come in, and you can just see it is oversold. You can even see here where we're making higher lows, price was making lower lows, you still get that bounce. So that's a really nice tailwind if you're a NIO bull, knowing that BABA's near bottom, and it might actually be looking like it's time, to consider getting longs for BABA. How about Baidu? Does Baidu have the same nice things? Yes, I see it on Baidu. When I go to the 4-hour time frame, I see the same thing on Baidu. Baidu made a huge lower low from 115 down to 105. May not seem like much, but that's a pretty big drop. That's a 10% difference. And from that bounce, that was actually a 17% drop. So anyone who's Baidu must be like, oh my God, like what's going on? But I see the same thing on Baidu. I see that the 4 hours making higher lows. Sellers are getting exhausted down here. And you look at the velocity. Velocity also is agreeing that there's less and less enthusiasm selling down here. There's less smart money that's selling this thing, and it's looking ready to go. Now, if I go to the 24 hours doesn't look as good as BABA. It's not quite as nice yet. And the reason it's not quite as nice is it's finished off on a lower low. And, you would, and that just means that it might get a little bit sticky down here before it moves. You get that move, something like that. I mean, and it could be a large impulsive move. You get a really big move, but it would come back down and you would get it like that. Again, if you're in Baidu, if we assume the bottom's in and, there's signs that the selling is slowing down, I'd be looking at 141 and 139 in the short term. I would be looking at that. And maybe that actually gives you your head and shoulders, and then you may want to kind of reconsider where things going. I mean, like, it doesn't actually necessarily have to be the head and shoulders, but it'll be funny because if it gives you that bounce, this is your left shoulder, your head, and then it's going to come back up and give you a right shoulder here. Doesn't need to. I think a lot of people will get freaked out if you see it come down. People are going to call the head and shoulders pattern on Baidu, and then it just, fakes everyone out, and then it runs really, really hard. I think Baidu has a lot of potential to do something really good. But short term, we cross those bridges when we get there. Not as good as BABA. JD has been probably one of the best Chinese names outside of NIO, which is funny because it was one of the worst ones. It just got hammered all the way from 36 down to 24. Completely hammered. One of the worst performing Chinese stocks is now one of the best. Funny how that works. And when I looked at the 24 hours, just look at JD. I'm going to remind you what BABA looked at. BABA, we're still below the midline. JD, we're above the midline. There is a tremendous amount of strength here for JD. So if you're a JD and you're holding on to JD and you're JD bull, I think you're going to be due for some really nice price action. I've been calling for $32 for a while on JD, and I think that is going to come. Where I got that $30 price target, I took the high and I dragged it to the low, and you can see that takes us roughly to the golden pocket around $32. I think that's a fair price target. It takes you right to the top of this channel, and you can see higher high, higher low, higher high, and it's now above the midline, and you're looking at potentially getting a higher low. And you can see the last time that JD was above the midline, it was testing the top of that trend line. So I think JD is going to be a tremendous winner going into next week, just based off what I see on the 24 hours. On the 4-hour time frame, you'll notice it's above the midline and it's showing strength. But it is, it gave you lower high, so it's you might get a little bit more of some consolidation. It could see a gap fill potentially first to 27. On the 1 hour time frame, you got that higher low signal, which is not bad. That's I'd take that. That's not a bad signal here. JD, I think, is going to be a big winner. K-Web. Look at K-Web. K-Web is awesome. Higher lows. Finally, higher lows. Finally, higher lows. Selling is slowing down. For sure it is. And the velocity tells it right here objectively. K-Web is a major ETF here and for China, and that is telling you that it's ready to go up, up. And I want to point out to you guys how funny, that's interesting, KGRN and NIO have been mirroring like almost to a T. It's like they're almost the exact same chart. There's NIO, it's actually outperforming the KGRN. And it made like actually a lower high, lower low here. It's interesting. It's above the midline. I think they're both very big. KGRN, by the way, is the Crane Shares MSCI China Clean Technology Index. NIO's trading in that. iDrive. And iDrive, that's a nice tailwind. It looks like it's giving you bullish divergences and a bottom right here. It's looking good. Tencent. We're going to quickly look at Tencent because I know some people asked me about that. A lot of people believe that NIO will this will be an awesome tailwind. When I look at it, this lower low followed by a higher low is in tremendous bullish, very bullish. You look at that wick too. It went from 58 up to 62. Higher low, bullish divergence. Sellers have lost control here. Buyers are taking over. And you're going to get the mean reversion and the move up into the midline here. And you're going to build out like that big rally on Tencent. And if you're looking at Tencent, if we pretend the bottom is in, I would say you'd be targeting 76. Okay. I shouldn't have even covered these, but I did. It's making my video a little bit longer. But we're nearing the end. We're going to go to the US dollar. The US dollar is interesting because when that US dollar rises, it puts a lot of pressure on the risk assets. And I've been tracking this trend line here, which it hasn't gone up and tested yet. But we have something very interesting on the US dollar. We have a bearish divergence on the 24 hours. That is generally a very topping signal for the US dollar and the US signal. And in order to avoid, and this is the one thing that I was kind of worried about, like NIO doing, making this lower high, but it also wouldn't be the end of the world for NIO or the US dollar, and I'll explain why. Because so long as it makes a higher low, you can still get that continuation of that pattern. Lower high. Now, where you'd want as a bull, you want the US dollar to make a lower low. It's a downtrend. Once you have a lower high and a lower low, you're in a downtrend, and that's often when you see your biggest and strongest moves down. Now, notice the last time was right over here. We were right over here last time, and it made a lower low. You got that little mini test, and then it just went boom, counter trend rally, and then you got that big down move. So you could see the neckline taken out. You know, you could see something. We could see something similar play out on that US dollar. That's the way you want it kind of to play out if you are a bull. You don't want to see the US dollar rise. And it's showing signs of cracking. That's absolutely fantastic. Now, if I were to go into the 4-hour time frame, yeah, it made a lower low on that velocity, and it's potentially making a lower high here. And the 200-day moving average is making lower low. So this is actually starting to get bearish on that US dollar. So anyone who's sitting on a cash position, say you're sidelined, and your cash position is being held in a USD account, and even any other account, I think like everything gets impacted when the US dollar drops, which is just the cash position. When your cash position is going, like if the US dollar does make a bigger correction to the downside, you could be losing potentially 3 to 4% of whatever you have just sitting in cash. It may not be the most safest place that you want to kind of necessarily put your money in if we get that drop. And there's a lot of weakness that I see here on the US dollar on the 4 hours. 1 hour, and I'm not going to do deep dive here. We'll keep it as this. We'll just cross that bridge when we get there, actually, tracking the US dollar here. For now, it's in a very interesting spot. It's very, very interesting spot, actually, here. And it did actually make a lower low, lower high, and it needs that lower low for continuation of a downtrend. But if it's holding here, you could see it drop to 99. I think for it to get all the way down, you'd want to get it below this trend line. That's when you would get that drop. That's going to be a giant move to the upside on the stock market. This is putting a lot of pressure. And if you get this, very, very, very good. Hang Seng Index. Look at that. That's not a bad sign at all. Let's zoom in. We now have first signs of buyers kind of somewhat taking, coming in here. We have a higher low. That's a decent signal, and a higher high. Those signals don't come very often. They don't. If I were to come back to when the Hang Seng Index first sold off at 28,000, the last time it gave a higher low signal was right in this range here. And it was like minor, like higher lows. And then you got like one more like push lower. It is lacking that impulsive move. We are trading kind of below this range, which is usually where you would see like the stimulus and the biggest moves. I would say this is the longest time that the Hang Seng Index has been trading down here. And we do want to see it break back up. And it will. Eventually you'll get the break back up. But I would say if you're playing it safe, you want to see that break back up with a large impulsive move. You're making a higher high. And now we're pushing and making like a really, 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 really big move. If I were to compare the velocity, I want to erase all of it. We'll just erase just one. If I compare the velocity to where we were, the last time we were this oversold was April, the tariff news, right? And that's pretty much how it is almost with the stock market. You're almost like all the way down to those levels. Should we look at oil? Let's look at oil for a second. Everybody's looking at oil. I look at the crude oil futures. I know you can look at the Brent oil, and there's different things to look at it. But it's absolutely, it's bizarre seeing oil be trading at over $100 a barrel of oil. And this is another one of my reservations with the stock market, where I think with what's happening with USA and Iran, proceeding cautiously needs to be very important. Like trading at like these levels, the last time we were this high was 2014. Okay, that's well beyond from when I was trading. Like I only started trading like during the pandemic, like in the 2020s. I've been trading for 6 years almost. And this goes back another 6 years prior to that, where oil was like, crazy. So it is something to watch for. And when I look at the velocity, perhaps it's setting up for that bearish divergence, hasn't given us the higher high. And if it's not able to do that, and it just swipes the high here. What's the high here? The high was 118. And it does so with the velocity making a lower high. That would be a clear top here for oil. And you could actually see a big capitulation, like boom. That's what the bulls want to see. And even if that's not the case, you should see some sort of pressure relief kind of come down at least into the 70s or 80s before, it does something like this again. I don't know. It's all speculation. Everybody's talking about it. It's all about the Strait of Hormuz and the geopolitics as to what's happening to the oil. There's a lot of people saying that there's a lot of backwardization, which is right here, the forward curve. They're pricing it to come down. You can see the contract is actually, as time goes on, they are anticipating the oil, which is like a temporary crisis, which is a good thing. You want to see the oil come down, but the question is when. And I want to wrap things up by coming all the way back to NIO, again, concluding my thoughts and give you my conclusion. And when I look at everything and I look at the big picture and I look at China as a whole, I could see things are pretty badly oversold. And they're showing now signs of life, both Baba and Baidu, signs of life, JD super duper strong, and as well as K-Web's showing signs of life. When I look at those pieces, when I look at the bearish divergence on the US dollar, when I look at the Hang Seng index, showing a little bit of life with the higher lows, my overall conclusion is that next week we're going to push up towards that $7 price target. And in order to get there and continue this move, and most importantly for me to get the higher high on that 24-hour velocity, I don't want to see it close, the day close, below the previous close. So we closed at 6:30 on Thursday. On Monday, I want it above that. And then on Tuesday, whatever it is, maybe we get to 650. I want it closing above that, and until we get that cleared. Once we get this cleared, then sure, bring on a dip. That's fine. It gives it more room to build a higher low. And that's where I stand. This thing can keep going. So long as it stays in that uptrend. So I'm going to go ahead and call for next week that we've broken out of the bull flag. Did I draw this for you guys? I don't know if I've drawn that for you guys. It is now officially broken out and it's ready to move. Ready to move. And you're going to get that big move. But in the meantime, keep your eyes peeled for this line right here. Where is it? That's my last ending note. Keep your eyes peeled right on right over here. I mean, sorry, I wonder if I can do it like that. Yeah, we can do it like that. Sure. I'm trying to make it very bullish. Keep your eyes peeled. So on Friday, 691. Okay, let's get up there. Let's do it. Let's get up. And I think if we can get to 691, $7 by Friday of next week, we're going to have our higher high here. Perhaps it does this. Right? That's exactly what I want to see. Something along those lines. If it's going to keep kissing and pushing and hugging, let it do that. That's it. That sums up my video. If this one might have been a little bit of a longer video, but it was the afternoon and I had the time to kind of put out this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys enjoyed it, don't forget, smash the thumbs up button if you liked it. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. And this invite goes out to anybody who has not already joined or is curious or wants to continue the conversation. In the link in the description below, there is a Discord link. It's a free Discord link where you can talk and discuss. We talk about NIO, geopolitics, and some off-topic fun stuff. You guys are all welcome to join where I'm there and a lot of people within the community are there. I'd love to see some more people join from the NIO community. I know a lot of people are not there. But I encourage you to stop by, check it out, come say hi. That's it. That's all. It's Friday. I hope you guys have a wonderful long weekend. Enjoy the long Easter weekend. And you guys all take care. Cheers.